His shadow fell across the bar before I even looked up. I'd learned to recognize the weight of his presence, the way conversations quieted when he entered, how the air itself seemed to shift and thicken. 3 months of serving him the same drink at the same time every night had taught me that Dominic Carelli didn't just walk into a room, he claimed it. I kept my hands steady as I reached for the bottle of Macallan 25, the amber liquid catching the low amber light of the speakeasy. My heart hammered against my ribs the way it always did when he arrived, a rhythm I'd tried and failed to control. He took his usual seat at the end of the bar, away from the crowd, positioned so he could see both entrances and keep his back to the wall. Old habits, I'd learned, die hard for men like him. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Emma. His voice was dark velvet, my name somehow different in his mouth than anyone else's. Not a greeting, just an acknowledgment. A claim. I set the glass in front of him, our fingers nearly touching as he reached for it. Nearly, but not quite. That space between us had become a chasm I didn't know how to cross, filled with everything we didn't say, everything we couldn't say. Rough day? I asked, the same question I asked every night, part of our ritual. He took a slow sip, his dark eyes never leaving mine. They're all rough days, Bella. Some are just rougher than others. The Italian endearment had started a month ago, slipping into our conversations like smoke under a door. I'd looked it up that first night, lying in my tiny apartment above the bar, my phone screen glowing in the darkness. Beautiful. He called me beautiful in a language that sounded like a promise and a warning all at once. The speakeasy hummed around us with muted conversation and jazz that wrapped around the exposed brick walls like silk. This place, the Crimson Room, existed in a pocket of Brooklyn that time had forgotten, or perhaps deliberately overlooked. We didn't advertise. We didn't need to. The kind of people who came here knew where to find us, and they came for the discretion as much as the drinks. I'd been working here for 8 months, ever since I'd fled Seattle, with nothing but a suitcase and the phone number of a friend who'd promised me a fresh start. What she'd failed to mention was that fresh starts in New York came with their own complications. The Crimson Room was owned by the Carelli family, a fact I'd discovered too late to matter. By then, I'd already signed the lease on the apartment upstairs, already committed myself to this life. And I'd already met Dominic. He came every night at 11, stayed for exactly 2 drinks, and left by midnight. Like clockwork. Like a man bound by routines that kept him alive. I'd learned not to ask questions, learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes that meant something had gone wrong. On those nights, I poured his drinks a little fuller, and we talked a little less. Tonight was one of those nights. You want to talk about it? I asked, already knowing the answer, as I wiped down the bar in front of him, the familiar motion giving my hands something to do besides reach for him. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You know I can't, Emma. Can't or won't? Both. He finished his drink, and I poured another without being asked. Tell me something instead. Tell me why a woman like you is working in a place like this. I'd deflected this question before, but tonight something in his eyes made me want to answer honestly. A woman like me? Smart, educated. I've seen the books you read between customers. He gestured to the worn paperback I kept under the bar, a collection of poetry I'd picked up from a street vendor. You don't belong here. Maybe I don't belong anywhere, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. His expression shifted, something dark and knowing crossing his face. Then that makes 2 of us. The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. Dominic Carelli, the man who commanded fear and respect in equal measure, who moved through the world like he owned it, was telling me he didn't belong. The revelation cracked something open inside my chest. I was engaged once, I found myself saying, surprising us both. In Seattle. He was a prosecutor, ambitious, perfect on paper, until he wasn't. Dominic's jaw tightened. He hurt you. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Not physically, but there are other ways to hurt someone. He wanted to control everything, where I went, who I saw, what I wore. When I finally left, he promised to ruin me. Made sure I couldn't get another job in my field, turned our mutual friends against me. I met his eyes. So I ran. Ended up here, pouring drinks for people who probably have their own demons. We all have demons, Bella. His hand moved across the bar, stopping just short of mine. The question is whether we feed them or fight them. Which do you do? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming a slow rhythm on the polished wood. I inherited mine, my father's legacy, my family's expectations. By the time I was old enough to choose, the choice had already been made for me. I wanted to ask more, wanted to understand the shadows that lived behind his eyes, but the door opened, and 3 men walked in. I recognized them immediately. Matteo and Vincent, Dominic's constant companions, and a third man I'd never seen before. Matteo's expression was grim as he approached the bar, leaning close to Dominic's ear. Whatever he whispered made Dominic's entire body go rigid. "I have to go," he said, standing abruptly. His eyes found mine, holding them with an intensity that made my breath catch. "Be careful tonight, Emma. Lock the doors early." "Dominic, what's—" "Please!" The word was soft but urgent. "Just do as I ask." He left with his men, the door closing behind them with a finality that sent ice through my veins. I'd seen him tense before, seen the dangerous edge that lurked beneath his controlled exterior. But this was different. This was fear, barely concealed. I served my remaining customers with mechanical efficiency, my mind racing with possibilities I didn't want to name. By the time I finally locked the doors at 2 a.m., my nerves were frayed. I climbed the narrow stairs to my apartment, my keys clutched between my fingers like a weapon, a habit from my Seattle days that I'd never quite shaken. My apartment was small but mine, a studio with exposed brick walls, a kitchenette that barely deserved the name, and a window that looked out over the Brooklyn street below. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by that window, watching the street, telling myself I wasn't waiting to see if Dominic's car would return. At 3 a.m., it did. I watched as he climbed out, his movements slower than usual, his hand pressed against his side. Even from this distance, I could see the dark stains spreading across his white shirt. Blood. I was down the stairs and out the door before conscious thought caught up with instinct. He was leaning against his car, his face pale in the streetlight, when I reached him. Jesus, Dominic. My hands fluttered uselessly, afraid to touch him, afraid not to. "You need a hospital." "No hospitals." His voice was strained but firm. "They ask too many questions." "Then what?" "Your apartment. Please, Emma. I can't go home like this. Too many eyes, too many questions I can't answer right now." Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to refuse, to call an ambulance, to distance myself from whatever this was. But the look in his eyes, vulnerable and trusting in a way I'd never seen, silenced every protest. "Can you make it up the stairs?" He nodded, though the grimace that followed suggested otherwise. I wrapped his arm around my shoulders, feeling the solid weight of him, the heat radiating through his blood-soaked shirt. We made it up the stairs in agonizing increments, each step drawing a barely suppressed sound of pain from him. Inside my apartment, I guided him to the bed, the only real furniture I owned, besides a small table and 2 chairs. He collapsed onto it with a groan that tore at something inside me. "I need to see the wound," I said, my hands already reaching for the buttons of his shirt. He caught my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong despite his condition. "Emma, if you do this, if you help me, there's no going back. You'll be involved in something you can't walk away from." I met his eyes, seeing the warning there, the genuine concern despite his pain. "Then tell me to leave. Tell me to call the police and walk away." His grip loosened, but didn't release. "I can't. God help me, I can't." "Then let me help you." I unbuttoned his shirt with trembling fingers, revealing a torso marked with old scars, evidence of a violent life I'd only glimpsed in shadows. The fresh wound was a deep gash along his ribs, still bleeding, but not as badly as I'd feared. "I have a first aid kit," I said, grateful that my voice remained steady. "It's not much, but it's enough. I've had worse." The casual way he said it made my heart clench. I retrieved the kit from under my sink, along with a bottle of vodka I kept for guests I never had. "This is going to hurt." "Everything hurts tonight, Bella. Don't stop on my account." I cleaned the wound as gently as I could, but he still hissed when the vodka hit torn flesh. His hand found mine, squeezing once, hard, before releasing. I worked in silence, hyper-aware of his eyes on me, of the intimacy of this moment that went beyond the physical. "Who did this?" I asked as I began to close the wound with careful stitches, grateful for the summer I'd spent as a camp counselor, learning basic first aid. "Men who wanted something I wasn't willing to give." His jaw tightened. "Men who thought they could take it by force. And they were wrong." The quiet menace in his voice sent a shiver down my spine. "They won't make that mistake again." I finished the last stitch and covered the wound with gauze and tape. "You should rest. I can take the floor." His hand caught mine again, thumb brushing across my knuckles in a gesture so tender it seemed at odds with everything else about him. "Stay, please, just until morning." I should have refused, should have maintained the distance we'd so carefully preserved for 3 months. Instead, I found myself kicking off my shoes and lying down beside him on top of the covers, maintaining a careful space between us that felt more significant than any canyon. "Why do you come to the bar every night, Dominic?" The question escaped in the darkness, emboldened by exhaustion and fear and the strange intimacy of this moment. "It's not for the drinks. The Macallan is excellent, but you could drink it anywhere." He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. Then, "You're right, it's not for the drinks." "Then why?" He turned his head to look at me, and in the dim light filtering through my window, his eyes were dark and fathomless. "Because for 1 hour every night, when I sit at that bar and you pour my drink and we talk about nothing and everything, I'm not Dominic Carelli. I'm not my father's son or my family's heir or the man people fear. I'm just a man talking to a beautiful woman who looks at me like I'm human." The confession hung between us, raw and honest. My throat tightened with emotion I didn't know how to name. "You are human, Dominic." "Am I?" His laugh was bitter. "I've done things, Emma. Things that would make you run if you knew. Things I can't undo or apologize for because they were necessary. Because in my world, mercy is weakness and compassion gets you killed." I turned onto my side, facing him fully now. "Then why risk it? Why come to the bar night after night, creating a routine that makes you predictable, vulnerable?" "Because of you." The words were simple, devastating. "Because somewhere in the last 3 months, you became the only real thing in my life. The only hour where I can breathe. And tonight, when Matteo told me there was a threat, that someone had been asking questions about the bar, about you," his jaw clenched. "I realized I'd put you in danger just by existing in your orbit." Fear spiked through me, sharp and cold. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggested someone knows you matter to me. the kind that could get you hurt just to make a point. He reached up, his hand cupping my face with surprising gentleness. I should stay away. I should never come back. But I'm not that strong, Bella. I'm not that selfless. Then don't be. The words came out breathless, my heart hammering so hard I was sure he could hear it. Don't stay away. Emma, I know what you are, Dominic. I'm not naive, but I also know what I feel when you walk through that door every night. I know how the world gets a little smaller, a little more bearable, when you sit at my bar. I took a shaky breath. So don't stay away. Not unless that's what you really want. His thumb traced my cheekbone, his touch reverent. What I want is dangerous. For both of us. I'm tired of being safe, I whispered. Safe got me controlled and isolated. Safe got me running across the country with nothing but a suitcase. Maybe it's time I choose something dangerous. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? I moved closer, eliminating the careful space between us. I'm lying in bed with a man I've stitched up in the middle of the night, knowing he's probably done things that should terrify me, and all I can think about is that I don't want him to leave when morning comes. His control cracked. I saw it in his eyes, a heartbeat, before his hand slid into my hair, drawing me closer. If I kiss you, Emma, everything changes. There's no going back to what we were. Maybe I don't want to go back. His lips met mine with a hunger that stole my breath. 3 months of restrained desire finally unleashed. The kiss was deep and claiming, tasting of whiskey and copper and something darker I didn't want to name. His hand tightened in my hair, angling my head for better access, while my fingers clutched at his shoulders, careful of his wound, but unable to stop touching him. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. You're mine now, Bella. Do you understand? In my world, that means something. It means I protect what's mine. It means anyone who touches you answers to me. The possessiveness should have scared me. After everything with Derek, after months of rebuilding my independence, I should have recoiled from the claiming in his voice. Instead, I felt something settle in my chest, something that felt dangerously close to belonging. And what does it mean for me? Or such a, I asked. Being yours? His expression softened. It means you never have to run again. It means you have a place, a purpose, protection. It means... He hesitated, vulnerability flickering across his face. It means you've given your heart to a man who might not deserve it, but will spend every day trying to earn it anyway. I kissed him again, softer this time, answering without words. We lay tangled together as the sky outside began to lighten, talking in whispers about everything and nothing. He told me about growing up in his father's shadow, about the weight of expectations and the moment he realized his life would never be his own. I told him about the slow erosion of myself in my relationship with Derek, about the night I finally found the courage to leave. He threatened you, Dominic said, his voice hardening. Your ex, he's still threatening you. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. He sends emails sometimes. Reminds me that he could find me if he wanted to, that I can't hide forever. I tried to keep my voice light, but the fear leaked through. It's probably just talk. He's moved on, gotten engaged to someone else. I'm not worth his time anymore. Dominic's arm tightened around me. Give me his name. Dominic, no, I don't want... Give me his name, Emma. His eyes met mine, dark and deadly serious. You're mine to protect now. That means the things that scare you, the people who hurt you, become my problem. Give me his name, and I promise you'll never fear him again. Part of me wanted to refuse, wanted to handle my own problems the way I'd been doing for months. But another part, the part that was so tired of looking over my shoulder, of jumping at shadows, wanted to let someone else carry that burden, wanted to believe that someone could make me safe. "Derek Morrison," I whispered. "He's an assistant district attorney in Seattle." Something cold and satisfied crossed Dominic's face. "Consider it handled." "What are you going to do?" "Nothing that will come back to you. Nothing that will put you in danger." He pressed a kiss to my forehead. "Trust me, Bella." And somehow, impossibly, I did. As dawn broke over Brooklyn and the city began to wake, I lay in the arms of a man who lived in shadows, who commanded violence with a word, who should have terrified me. Instead, I felt safer than I had in years, protected by the very darkness I should have been running from. Dominic was gone when I woke. The only evidence of his presence, the faint indentation on the pillow beside me, and a note on my nightstand written in sharp, decisive handwriting. "Stay home today. My men will be outside. Don't argue. D." I should have been angry at the command, at the assumption that I would simply obey. Instead, I found myself smiling at the note, tracing the bold strokes of his signature with my fingertip. Outside my window, a black SUV idled at the curb, confirming his words. I was being watched, protected. The distinction between the two had never felt more blurred. The day stretched endlessly. I tried to read, to clean my already spotless apartment, to do anything that would quiet the questions multiplying in my mind. What had I done? What had I agreed to by letting Dominic into my bed, into my life? I'd spent 8 months carefully constructing a new existence built on independence and safety, and in one night, I'd demolished it all for a man whose last name was synonymous with organized crime. My phone buzzed around noon, an unknown number, but I answered anyway, my heart jumping at the possibility that it might be him. "Emma Reese." The voice was female, clipped and professional. "My name is Sophia Carelli. I'm Dominic's sister. I'd like to meet you." The surprise rendered me momentarily speechless. Dominic had mentioned his family only in passing, a father who'd died 5 years ago, responsibilities that had fallen to him as the eldest son. He'd never mentioned a sister. Of course, when?" "There's a cafe 3 blocks from your apartment, Russo's. Meet me there in an hour. Come alone. But don't worry, my brother's men can watch from outside if it makes you feel safer." There was the dry amusement in her tone. "I'm sure they will anyway." She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, uncertainty warring with curiosity. This felt like a test, though I couldn't say of what. But if I was truly part of Dominic's world now, meeting his sister seemed inevitable. I dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a simple black sweater. Nothing too formal, nothing too casual. As I descended to the street, one of the men from the SUV fell into step behind me, maintaining a professional distance, but making his presence known. Protection or surveillance? Maybe both. Russo's was a small Italian cafe with red-checked tablecloths and the smell of espresso hanging thick in the air. Sophia Carelli sat at a corner table, and I recognized her immediately, despite never having seen her before. She had Dominic's dark eyes, the same sharp intelligence in her gaze, but where his presence commanded through power, hers commanded through precision. "Emma." She stood as I approached, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." Did I have a choice? The words came out more challenging than I'd intended, but Sophia's lips curved in approval. "There's always a choice. The question is whether you're willing to accept the consequences of saying no." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit. I've ordered you a cappuccino. Dominic mentioned it's your preference." The casual reference to their conversations about me sent a strange warmth through my chest. He talks about me? Incessantly. It's quite unlike him. Sophia studied me with an intensity that reminded me painfully of her brother. My brother is many things, Emma, but careless isn't one of them. Until you. I wrapped my hands around the cappuccino that appeared before me, needing something to do with my nervous energy. Is that why you wanted to meet me? To tell me I'm a liability? No, I wanted to meet the woman who made my brother forget every rule our father taught him about survival. She sipped her own espresso, her movements elegant and controlled. Do you know what those rules are? I shook my head. Never create patterns. Never have regular routines. Never give your enemies a target they can predict or exploit. Her eyes held mine. For 3 months, Dominic went to your bar every night at the same time. He made himself predictable, vulnerable. For you. The weight of that settled over me. The men last night, the ones who hurt him, they knew his routine. They knew, and they used it against him. He could have been killed, Emma. Very nearly was. Sophia's expression softened slightly. But I'm not here to blame you. I'm here because I need you to understand what it means to be loved by a man like Dominic Carelli. Tell me. It means you become his greatest strength and his greatest weakness. It means every enemy he's ever made will eventually see you as a weapon to use against him. It means your life will never be simple or safe or normal again, she paused. It also means he will burn the world down before he lets anyone hurt you. Our father taught us many things, but the most important was this. Family is everything. We protect our own no matter the cost. I'm not family, I said quietly. Sophia's smile was knowing. You are now. The moment my brother claimed you, the moment he brought you under our protection, you became family, which is why I'm here to offer you a choice. What choice? Walk away, now, while you still can. I'll make sure you have money, a new identity, a fresh start, somewhere Dominic will never find you. You'll be safe, free, able to build whatever life you want, she leaned forward. Or stay. Commit fully to this world, to him, knowing that once you do, there's no safety net. You'll be ours, Emma. Protected but also bound by the same rules, the same dangers, the same impossible choices that define our existence. My hands trembled around the cup. And if I stay? What does that actually mean? It means you stop bartending and start learning what it really means to be part of this family. It means you'll have responsibilities, expectations, a role to play. Sophia's expression grew serious. My brother's world is complex, Emma. He has legitimate businesses and less legitimate ones. He has allies who are barely friends and enemies who smile to his face while plotting his downfall. Navigating that requires intelligence, discretion, and absolute loyalty. You're describing a job. I'm describing survival and partnership. Dominic needs someone he can trust completely, someone who understands both sides of his life, someone who can stand beside him in public and still accept the shadows he operates in. She tilted her head. Can you be that person? The question hung between us, enormous and terrifying. Could I? Could I abandon the simple life I'd tried to build and embrace something darker, more complicated, infinitely more dangerous? I don't know, I admitted. But I know I can't walk away. Not now. Sophia nodded as if I'd confirmed something she already knew. Then, we begin your education, starting now. She pulled out a tablet, swiping through images and documents with practiced efficiency. These are the families that matter in New York. The Russos, the Castellanos, the DeMarcos. Some are allies, some are neutral. Some would kill Dominic in a heartbeat if they thought they could get away with it. She pointed to a photograph of a distinguished older man. Antonio Russo. He and my father were close once, but that alliance died with our father. Antonio thinks Dominic is too young, too impulsive, too willing to modernize operations that have run the same way for generations. Is he right? Sophia's smile was sharp. Dominic is brilliant. He sees opportunities where others see only tradition. But brilliance makes people nervous, especially those who have something to lose. Antonio has been quietly building opposition, calling meetings with other families, suggesting that Dominic's leadership puts all of them at risk. Is that true? Every leader is a risk. The question is whether the risk brings growth or chaos. She swiped to another image, this one of a younger man with cold eyes and a predatory smile. Marco DeMarco. He runs drugs through the port Dominic controls. They have an arrangement, but Marco wants more territory, more power. He's been testing boundaries, pushing limits, seeing how far he can go before Dominic pushes back. My head spun with information, with the sudden understanding of just how precarious Dominic's position was. He has enemies on every side. We all do. That's the nature of power. You take it, you hold it, you defend it every single day. Sophia closed the tablet. But you also build alliances where you can. Which brings me to tomorrow night. What's tomorrow night? A fundraiser. Very exclusive, very expensive, ostensibly for children's hospitals, but really an excuse for people like us to gather in public, take measure of each other, make deals over champagne and canapes. Her eyes glinted. Dominic will need a date. Someone beautiful and intelligent who can navigate high society while understanding the undercurrents beneath it. Someone who makes him look stable, settled, less of a wild card to the families who are nervous about his leadership. You want me to be arm candy? The bitterness in my voice surprised me. I want you to be his partner. There's a difference. Sophia's expression grew intent. These people will judge you, Emma. They'll try to determine if you're a weakness or a strength. They'll smile and make polite conversation while cataloging every word you say, every gesture you make, looking for ammunition to use against Dominic later. You need to be perfect. The pressure of it crashed over me. I don't know how to be perfect in that world. Then learn, quickly. She stood, graceful and commanding. A stylist will come to your apartment this evening. She'll make sure you have everything you need for tomorrow. And Emma? She paused. Don't disappoint my brother. He's risked everything for you. Make sure you're worth it. She left me sitting alone with my cold cappuccino and the weight of expectations I wasn't sure I could meet. When I finally returned to my apartment, the reality of what I'd agreed to hit me with full force. I wasn't just dating Dominic Carelli. I was entering his world, taking on a role in a dangerous game where the stakes were measured in blood and loyalty. My phone buzzed. Dominic this time, his name appearing on the screen like an answer to a question I hadn't asked. Sophia said she met you. She did. She's terrifying. His laugh was low and warm. She likes you. If she didn't, you'd know it. She said I have to be perfect tomorrow night. You're already perfect, Bella. His voice softened. But I know this is a lot. If you need more time, if you want to, I don't want more time. The certainty in my voice surprised us both. I want to be with you, Dominic. Even if that means learning to navigate a world I don't understand. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I worried I'd said something wrong. Then, I don't deserve you, Emma, but I'm selfish enough to keep you anyway. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Tomorrow night, then, I'll pick you up at 7. And Emma, thank you for staying, for choosing this, for choosing me. After we hung up, I stood by my window, watching the street below. The SUV still there, still watching. My old life felt like something that had happened to someone else. The safe, simple existence I'd tried to build now revealed as the illusion it had always been. Maybe I'd never really wanted safe. Maybe I'd just been too scared to admit I wanted something more. The stylist arrived at 6, a whirlwind of fabric and opinions named Gianna, who transformed my apartment into a temporary salon. She brought 3 dresses, each more beautiful than the last, but settled on a deep burgundy gown with a neckline that managed to be both elegant and daring. Shoes that cost more than my monthly rent. Jewelry that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Signor Carelli has excellent taste," Gianna said as she worked on my hair, twisting it into an elegant updo that left my neck bare. He chose everything himself, even the lipstick shade. The intimacy of that detail made my chest tighten. I'd expected him to simply throw money at the problem, to have someone else handle the details. Instead, he'd thought about what I would wear, what colors would suit me, what would make me feel beautiful while projecting the strength Sophia had said I needed to show. When Gianna finally finished and held up a mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back looked sophisticated, confident, like she belonged in Dominic's world. Like she could handle whatever tomorrow night would bring. Dominic arrived exactly at 7, and the look on his face when I opened the door made every moment of preparation worthwhile. He stood frozen in my doorway, his eyes darkening as they traveled over me. "Cristo," he breathed. "Emma, you're—" He seemed to lose words, something I'd never seen happen to him before. "Is it too much?" Suddenly uncertain, I touched the dress self-consciously. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him, his hands finding my waist and pulling me close. "It's perfect. You're perfect." He kissed me then, deep and possessive, his hands careful not to disturb Gianna's work, but his intent unmistakable. "I don't want to share you with a room full of vultures tonight." "Then why are we going?" "Because sometimes we have to play the game, Bella, even when we'd rather burn the board." He pulled back, his expression growing serious. "Tonight will be difficult. People will say things, do things, test you in ways that aren't always obvious. Stay close to me. Don't accept drinks from anyone else. Don't go anywhere alone." Fear flickered through me. "You think someone might try to hurt me?" "I think you're mine now, and that makes you a target. But I also think you're stronger than you know." He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. "You survived Seattle. You rebuilt your life from nothing. You faced down Sophia this afternoon without flinching. You can handle this." His faith in me felt like armor. I straightened my shoulders, lifting my chin. "Then let's go play the game." The fundraiser was held at a historic mansion on the Upper East Side, the kind of place that dripped old money and older secrets. Luxury cars lined the circular drive, and the glittering crowd spilling out onto the terrace looked like something from a movie. Dominic kept his hand at the small of my back as we entered, a gesture that appeared courteous but felt more like a claim. Eyes followed us. Conversations paused mid-sentence. I felt the weight of their scrutiny, their curiosity, their calculation. Who was I? Where had I come from? What did my presence at Dominic's side mean for the delicate balance of power in the room? Dominic, a man in his 60s, approached, his smile not reaching his eyes. Antonio Russo, I realized, recognizing him from Sophia's tablet. "What a surprise to see you here." "Antonio." Dominic's tone was perfectly polite, perfectly cold. "I wouldn't miss it. The Children's Hospital is such a worthy cause." "Indeed. And who is this lovely creature?" Antonio's eyes fronted over me with the practiced assessment of a man who saw everything as either asset or liability. "Emma Reese, my partner." The way Dominic said it left no room for misinterpretation. Not girlfriend, not date, partner, equal. I extended my hand, channeling every ounce of confidence I didn't quite feel. "Mr. Russo, it's a pleasure." "The pleasure is mine." He held my hand a moment too long, his eyes searching. "Reese, that's not an Italian name." "My father was Irish." The lie came smoothly, another piece of armor Sophia had helped me prepare. My real history, my flight from Seattle, the truth about who I'd been, none of that belonged in this room. "And how did you meet our Dominic?" She serves the best drinks in Brooklyn, Dominic interjected, his smile sharp. I'm a man who appreciates quality. Antonio laughed, but there was no humor in it. Quality, yes. Your father, God rest his soul, he appreciated quality too, though he was always careful not to let personal attachments cloud his judgment. The insult was delicate but unmistakable. Dominic's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on my waist. My father taught me many things, Antonio, including when to hold on to something valuable and when to let go of dead weight. The tension crackled between them before Antonio's smile widened. Well said. Enjoy the evening, you two. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. As he walked away, I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That was a warning, Dominic finished. He's telling me that loving you makes me vulnerable, that he sees you as my weakness. Am I? The question came out smaller than I'd intended. He turned to face me fully, his hands framing my face, oblivious to the room still watching us. You're my strength, Emma. Don't ever doubt that. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of introductions and carefully coded conversations. Marco DeMarco, whose cold eyes lingered on me too long before Dominic's warning glare made him look away. The Castellano family, who seemed genuinely warm until I caught the way they exchanged glances when they thought we weren't looking. Politicians who played at legitimacy while taking money from everyone in the room. By the time we finally escaped to the terrace for air, my face hurt from smiling, and my mind spun with the effort of tracking every nuance, every hidden threat. You were perfect, Dominic said, pulling me into a quiet corner. Better than perfect. You handled Antonio like you've been doing this your whole life. I felt like an imposter. We're all imposters here, Bella. The trick is making everyone else believe you belong. He pulled me closer, his lips finding my temple. Thank you. For tonight. For all of this. Dominic. A new voice cut through our moment. I turned to see a woman approaching, beautiful and hard-edged, her eyes fixed on Dominic with an intensity that made my stomach clench. I wondered if you'd show. Valentina. Something in Dominic's tone made me look up at him sharply. His expression had shuttered completely. Aren't you going to introduce me to your new accessory? Her smile was poison wrapped in silk. Emma, this is Valentina DeMarco, Marco's sister. His emphasis on the last word was clear warning. Valentina, Emma is my partner. Partner, how modern. Valentina's eyes raked over me, dismissive and cold. I give it 3 months before the novelty wears off. That's about his limit, isn't it, Dominic? 3 months before you get bored and move on to the next pretty face? The casual cruelty took my breath away. But before I could respond, Dominic stepped between us. Careful, Valentina. The last person who disrespected what's mine ended up regretting it. Don't make me add you to that list. She laughed, the sound brittle. Still so protective, it's almost sweet. But we both know how this ends. She'll realize what you are, what you do, and she'll run, they always do. Then, I guess I'll be the exception, I said, finding my voice, stepping around Dominic to face her directly. Because I know exactly what he is, and I'm still here. Valentina's eyes narrowed. Bold words from someone who doesn't understand the game. Maybe, but I'm a fast learner. I held her gaze, refusing to back down. And unlike you, I don't have to rely on bitterness and manipulation to feel powerful. For a moment, I thought she might actually strike me. Then Dominic's hand found mine, his fingers threading through mine in a gesture that was both tender and possessive. This conversation is over, he said quietly. Walk away, Valentina. Now. She did, but not before shooting me a look that promised retribution. I watched her go, my heart hammering, adrenaline singing through my veins. You shouldn't have provoked her, Dominic said, though there was pride in his voice. The DeMarcos are dangerous. So are we, I replied. surprising myself with the certainty of it. We, as if I'd already fully accepted my place in this world, in his life. His smile was fierce and genuine. Yes, Bella, we are. The threat came 3 days later. Not with violence, but with silence. Dominic stopped coming to the apartment. His texts grew sparse, his calls brief and distant. The SUV still waited outside my building, his men still shadowed my movements. But the man himself had disappeared behind walls I couldn't scale. Sophia found me on the 4th day, sitting in the empty bar during closed hours, staring at the bottles lined up behind the counter, like soldiers awaiting orders. "He's protecting you," she said without preamble, sliding onto the stool Dominic had claimed as his own for 3 months. In the stupidest way possible, but that's his intention. Protecting me from what? From the consequences of loving him. She signaled for a drink, and I poured her whiskey on autopilot. After the fundraiser, after you stood up to Valentina, the families started talking. You're not just Dominic's weakness anymore. You're his legitimacy, his humanity, proof that he's not just the ruthless businessman they feared he was becoming. And that's bad? It's complicated. Antonio Russo sees it as confirmation that Dominic is going soft, losing the edge that made his father formidable. Marco DeMarco sees you as leverage, a way to manipulate Dominic into concessions he'd never make otherwise. She drank, her expression grim. And Valentina? She sees you as the reason Dominic never came back to her. The last piece clicked into place. They were together. Years ago, before our father died, before Dominic inherited everything, she expected him to marry her, to unite the Carelli and DeMarco families. Sophia's smile was bitter. But Dominic chose duty over desire back then, sent her away rather than risk the complications a marriage would bring. She's never forgiven him. So he's pushing me away now because he thinks I'm in danger. He knows you're in danger. 3 nights ago, someone tried to break into your apartment. His men stopped them, but the message was clear. Sophia's eyes met mine. They're coming for you, Emma, and Dominic would rather break both your hearts than risk your life. The pain of it settled in my chest, sharp and relentless. Where is he? Handling it, his way. She finished her drink. But between you and me, his way is going to get him killed. He's so focused on protecting you that he's forgotten to protect himself. He's meeting with the families alone, making concessions he shouldn't make, accepting terms that weaken his position. All because he thinks if he makes himself less of a threat, they'll leave you alone. Will they? No, men like Antonio and Marco, they see weakness and they attack. It's their nature, she stood. He needs you, Emma, whether he admits it or not. He needs someone to remind him that strength isn't just about standing alone. After Sophia left, I sat in the silence of the empty bar, turning her words over in my mind. For months, I'd been running. From Derek, from my past, from anything that felt too complicated or dangerous. I'd built a life based on caution and distance, convinced that safety meant isolation. But Dominic had shattered that illusion. He'd shown me that real safety didn't come from hiding. It came from having someone willing to stand beside you when the world turned dark. And now, he was out there alone, sacrificing himself piece by piece because he thought that's what love required. I pulled out my phone and called the only person who might help me. I need to see him, I told Sophia. Tonight. She was quiet for a moment. He won't like it. I don't care. Tell me where he is. The address she gave me led to a warehouse district in Red Hook, the kind of place where questions weren't asked and answers weren't given. The SUV that had been following me for days now led the way. The driver, a man named James, who'd never spoken more than 2 words to me, finally breaking his silence. "Miss Reese, you should know that Signor Carelli gave explicit orders that you weren't to be brought here." Then it's a good thing I'm not asking permission. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, and I saw the approval flicker there. He's in a meeting with all 5 families. It's tense. How tense? The kind where everyone's armed and no one trusts anyone else. He pulled up to a nondescript building, its windows dark, its exterior deliberately forgettable. I can't let you go in alone. Then come with me. We entered through a side door, James moving with the practiced ease of someone who'd done this before. Inside, the warehouse had been converted into something between an office and a fortress, exposed brick, expensive furniture, and enough security cameras to monitor every angle. Voices echoed from a room at the far end, raised in argument. Wait here, James said, but I was already moving toward those voices, toward Dominic. The room fell silent as I entered. 6 men sat around a table. Dominic at one end, his expression thunderous. Antonio Russo occupied the other end, satisfaction written across his features. Marco DeMarco lounged to Antonio's right, his sister Valentina beside him. The others I recognized from the fundraiser, power players whose names carried weight and whose loyalty was always for sale. Emma. Dominic's voice was sharp with shock and fury. What are you doing here? What you should have done days ago, refusing to do this alone. I walked to his side, my heels clicking against concrete, every eye in the room tracking my movement. You want to negotiate my safety? Fine, but I get a voice in that negotiation. This is family business, Antonio said, his tone dripping condescension. You should leave this to those who understand how things work. Family business, right. I turned to face him fully. Funny how family business always seems to involve everyone except the person whose life is actually at stake. Emma. Dominic's hand caught my wrist, his grip gentle despite the warning in his touch. You need to leave. Now. No. I pulled free, moving to stand between him and the others. For months, I let someone else control my life. I let fear make my decisions. I ran instead of fighting. My eyes swept across the table. I'm done running, and I'm done watching the man I love destroy himself because he thinks that's what protecting me looks like. How touching, Valentina said, her voice acid. But love doesn't change the reality of this world. You're a liability, Miss Reese, a weakness that Dominic's enemies will exploit until either you're dead or he is. Maybe. Or maybe I'm exactly what he needs to remind him that he's stronger than all of you combined. I looked at each of them in turn. You sit here trying to negotiate away pieces of what Dominic built because you're afraid. Afraid of his ambition, his intelligence, his willingness to evolve, while you cling to traditions that are killing you slowly. You don't see a weakness when you look at me. You see proof that Dominic is everything you're not, capable of caring about something beyond power and profit. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Marco DeMarco laughed, the sound sharp and surprised. She's got fire. I'll give her that. Fire burns, Antonio said coldly, and when it does, it takes everything with it. Then maybe some things deserve to burn. Dominic stood, his presence filling the room, and for the first time since I'd arrived, I saw the man his enemies feared. You came here tonight to force my hand, to make me choose between the woman I love and the empire I built. You thought that was a choice that would break me. He moved to stand beside me, his hand finding mine, our fingers interlacing. But you forgot something. My father taught me that family is everything, that we protect our own no matter the cost. Emma is my family now, which means she's under the same protection as every Carelli. The same rules apply. You'd start a war over a woman? Antonio's voice was incredulous. I'd end one. Dominic's smile was cold and certain. You want to test me? Want to see if I'm serious? Go ahead. Touch her. Threaten her. Come anywhere near what's mine. His eyes swept the table. And I'll show you exactly what I learned from my father about protecting family. I'll show you why you should have been more afraid of the son than you ever were of the father." The threat hung in the air, unmistakable and absolute. I felt the shift in the room, the recalculation happening behind each set of eyes. They'd thought Dominic weakened by love, made vulnerable by attachment. Instead, they were seeing a man who'd found something worth fighting for, something worth burning the world to protect. "This is madness," Antonio said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. "You'd risk everything." "I'm risking nothing. I'm making a promise." Dominic's hand tightened on mine. "Emma stays. She's mine, under my protection, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly. No more negotiations, no more threats, no more games." Marco leaned back in his chair, studying us both with calculating eyes. "And if we refuse? If we decide you've become too unpredictable to work with? Then you find out what happens when you back a predator into a corner." Dominic's voice was soft, deadly. "You find out why my father chose me to inherit everything. Not because I was the eldest, not because I was the smartest, but because when pushed, I'm the one willing to do what's necessary, always." The truth of it resonated through the room. These men had spent weeks trying to manipulate Dominic, trying to use me as leverage to control him, but they'd miscalculated. They'd given him something to fight for, something beyond ambition or duty or the cold logic of business. They'd given him love, and love, I realized, made him infinitely more dangerous than fear ever could. Valentina was the first to break. "This is pointless. He's made his choice." She stood, her chair scraping against concrete. "But don't come crying to us when that choice destroys you, Dominic. Don't expect us to pick up the pieces when she's gone." "I won't be gone," I said quietly, and she paused at the door. "That's what you don't understand. All of you. You keep waiting for me to run, to realize what I've gotten into, and disappear. But I'm not running. I know exactly what he is, what this world is, and I choose it anyway. I choose him." Something like pain crossed Valentina's face before she masked it. Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with finality. One by one, the others left, some with veiled threats, others with grudging respect. Antonio was last, stopping at the door to look back at Dominic. "Your father would be proud, or horrified, I'm not sure which." His expression was unreadable. "But either way, you've made your choice. Live with it." Then we were alone, the warehouse suddenly cavernous and empty. Dominic pulled me into his arms, his embrace fierce enough to steal breath. "You shouldn't have come here," he said against my hair. "You could have been killed, if any of them had decided to make a move, but they didn't, because you wouldn't have let them." I pulled back to look at him, and because I was right. They're afraid of you, Dominic, not in spite of loving me, but because of it. Because a man who has something to lose is a man who'll stop at nothing to protect it. His laugh was shaky, relieved. "You terrify me, Emma Reese, walking in here like you owned the place, facing down men who've killed for less than the disrespect you showed them." I learned from the best. I touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "You've been protecting me since the night we met, teaching me to be strong, to stand my ground. Did you think I'd forget all that the moment things got dangerous? I thought I could keep you safe by pushing you away. You can't keep me safe by breaking my heart. We're stronger together, Dominic. These past days without you, I've never felt more vulnerable." My voice dropped. "I need you. Not your protection, not your money or power. You, the man who sits at my bar every night. The man who looks at me like I'm the only real thing in his world." He kissed me then, deep and desperate, his hands tangling in my hair, his body pressed against mine, as if he could fuse us together through sheer will. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "I love you," he said, the words raw and honest. "I've loved you since the first night you poured my drink and looked at me like I was just another customer, like I was normal, human, just a man." "You are just a man," I whispered. "A complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who somehow saw past all my walls and defenses, who made me believe I could be more than what I'd settled for." "What happens now?" The question held vulnerability I'd rarely heard from him. "Now we live. Together, we face whatever comes next the same way we faced tonight. Side by side." I smiled. "And you stop trying to protect me from your world. I'm part of it now, for better or worse." "Worse will come," he warned. "This isn't over. Antonio will regroup, Marco will test boundaries, and there will always be someone who sees you as a weapon to use against me. Then they'll learn what happens when they try." I laced my fingers through his. "I'm not a victim, Dominic. Not anymore. I'm a woman who chose a dangerous man and his dangerous world because the alternative, safety without passion, survival without purpose, that's not living. That's just existing." He pulled me close again, and I felt his heart beating against mine, steady and strong. My father used to say that a man's strength is measured by what he's willing to defend, not what he takes, but what he refuses to lose. And what do you refuse to lose? You, us, this. His arms tightened. Everything else can burn if it means keeping you safe, keeping us whole. We left the warehouse, hand in hand, walking out into a Brooklyn dawn that painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. The SUV waited, James at the wheel, but Dominic waved him off. "We'll walk," he said, and I understood. After everything, the threats, the fear, the days of separation, we needed this. The simple act of moving through the world together, unguarded and unafraid. The streets were just waking, delivery trucks rumbling past, early risers heading to work. We walked in comfortable silence, our fingers interlaced, our steps synchronized. The city that had once felt dangerous now felt like home, made safe not by the absence of threat, but by the presence of someone who'd faced that threat beside me. "I need to tell you something," I said as we neared my building. "About Derek, about what happened in Seattle." "You don't have to." "I want to." I stopped, turning to face him. "You showed me your world, your darkness. I want you to know mine." So I told him all of it, the slow erosion of myself under Derek's control, the fear that had paralyzed me, the night I'd finally found courage to leave, the threats that followed, the emails that still came occasionally, reminding me that I'd never truly be free. When I finished, Dominic's expression was granite. "He still contacts you?" "Sometimes. Less now than before. I think he's moved on, but he likes to remind me that he could find me if he wanted to." "Give me your phone." I handed it over, watching as he scrolled through my emails, his jaw tightening with each message he read. Then he pulled out his own phone, typing rapidly. "What are you doing?" "Ensuring you never hear from him again." He showed me the screen, a message to someone named Giovanni, containing Derek Morrison's name, address, and a simple instruction. "Handle it. Quietly." "Dominic, you can't." "I can and I did. He threatened you, terrorized you, made you feel unsafe in your own life." His eyes were hard. "That ends today. You're mine to protect now, Emma, from old threats and new ones, from the past and the future, from everything that would hurt you." I should have been disturbed by how easily he ordered what might be violence against someone who'd hurt me. Instead, I felt something release in my chest. A tension I'd carried for so long, I'd forgotten it was there. Derek Morrison, the man who'd controlled me, threatened me, made me afraid to live. He was finally, truly going to be gone. Thank you, I whispered. We climbed the stairs to my apartment, that small space that had been my refuge and my prison. But as Dominic closed the door behind us, pulling me into his arms, it transformed into something new, a beginning rather than an ending, a place where two damaged people had found something neither had been looking for, a home in each other. Months passed, seasons changing, the city shifting from summer heat to autumn gold to winter's sharp cold. The threats that had seemed so immediate that night in the warehouse never materialized. Antonio Russo made his peace with Dominic's leadership, recognizing that fighting him would cost more than accepting him. Marco DeMarco found other territories to expand into, other deals to pursue. And Valentina DeMarco disappeared from New York entirely, last heard living in Italy, trying to forget a man who'd never truly been hers. The bar became ours officially. Dominic bought the building, renovated the space, turned it into something that bridged his two worlds, legitimate and shadow, legal and less so. I learned the business, both sides of it, until I could navigate his empire as easily as I mixed drinks. Sophia became not just his sister, but mine, teaching me the 1,000 unspoken rules of their world, protecting me even as she challenged me to be stronger. And every night, without fail, Dominic came to the bar. Not at 11 anymore. That pattern had died the night he'd nearly died. But he always came, claimed his seat, ordered his drink, and looked at me with eyes that said I was home. I was safety. I was everything. 1 year to the day, after the night I'd stitched his wound in my apartment, Dominic placed a small velvet box on the bar between us. Inside, a ring, antique gold with a single diamond, elegant and understated. It was my grandmother's, he said quietly. The only thing of value my father's mother brought from Italy when she immigrated. She wore it through poverty and hardship, through building a new life in a country that didn't want her. She told me once that it represented her strength, her refusal to surrender who she was, even when the world demanded it. Tears blurred my vision as I looked from the ring to him. Dominic, I'm not offering you an easy life, Emma. I can't promise safety or simplicity or conventional happiness. What I can promise is that every day for the rest of my life, I'll choose you. I'll stand beside you, fight for you, build a life with you that's ours and no one else's. He took my hand. Marry me. Not because it makes sense or because it's strategic or because it means anything to anyone but us. Marry me because I love you, and I can't imagine a future where you're not part of everything I am. Yes. The word came without hesitation, without doubt. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll build that life with you. I'll be your partner in every sense of the word. He slid the ring onto my finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant for me, as if his grandmother had known, decades ago, that someday her grandson would find a woman worth giving it to. We married quietly, just family and a handful of trusted friends. No spectacle, no grand affair. Just two people promising to face whatever came next together, bound not by tradition, but by choice. By love that had been tested and proven stronger than fear, stronger than the darkness that had tried to tear us apart. Years later, standing on the balcony of the home we'd built in the Brooklyn brownstone we'd renovated together, I watched the city lights twinkle below and thought about that scared woman who'd fled Seattle with nothing but a suitcase. She'd been looking for safety, for escape, for a life small enough that it couldn't hurt her. Instead, she'd found Dominic Carelli. She'd found danger and passion and a love that demanded everything and gave back even more. She'd found a world that should have destroyed her, but instead taught her what she was truly capable of. She'd found herself. Dominic's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing, How strange life is. I leaned back into him. How a phone call answered in Italian can change everything. How serving a drink to the wrong man at the wrong time can become the best decision you never knew you were making. His laugh rumbled through his chest into my back. The right man, Bella. The right time. It just took us both a while to realize it. No regrets? Only that I didn't walk into your bar sooner. He turned me in his arms, his eyes soft with the kind of contentment I'd once thought impossible for a man like him. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, not just love, but permission to be more than what I was born into, to choose something beyond duty and legacy and the weight of expectations. We chose each other, I said simply. Everything else was just noise. And as the city hummed below us and the night settled around our home, I knew it was true. In a world built on power and violence, where loyalty was currency and love was liability, we'd found something rare, something worth fighting for, worth defending, worth building a life around. We'd found each other, and that, in the end, was everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.